Hello everyone and welcome to a new video from Your Overwatch. I'm Eddie the Chump and today we've got a bit of a news roundup for you. We'll be covering the further nerfs to armor on the PTR, the brand new Paris 2CP map that's also been added, as well as some interesting hero ban and protect stats from Jayne's recent community tournaments. We'll then round out the video by talking about Dafran's hilarious interview on the Atlanta Reign YouTube channel. There's quite a lot to get through, so let's just get started. First up is that on the PTR, the ordering of how extra armor, shields, and health has been changed, which is important for a few characters in specific, namely heroes like Zenyatta and Zarya. Previously, ultimates like Rally gave their bonuses underneath their recoverable shields, which meant that to even get to it, you had to take their standard shields down first. Now on those two heroes, that could be quite a challenge as they had 200 and 150 shields respectively. Part of the reason why Goats was so strong for such a long time was because armor made comps incredibly sustainable, and it was a common complaint from the pro scene that having rally armor underneath shields that automatically regenerated was too strong. Imagine Jonak with 300 health, 150 of which would regenerate before you even got a chance to chip away at that armor. He was practically a Terminator. Yeah, I don't fancy trying to kill him either. But recently rally armor was changed anyway, whereas it used to persist forever. The most recent patch made it so that it went away after 30 seconds if it hadn't been eroded. Tie that in with some buffs to spread and multi-hit damage weapons, armor has never been weaker than it is now. It seems to me that Blizzard are really concerned with how dominant Goats has been at the highest level, and this is just the latest change to try and curb that a little bit. Now you might think that because rally armor already dissipates automatically now, this change isn't going to be as impactful as it might have once been. This might be true, but I think there's an aspect we're not looking at. Rally armor wasn't just good when fully stacked on a teammate, it was also good at channeling while Brig activated it for the first 10 seconds of her ult. Previously, as this was happening on a Zen or a Zarya, you still had to chew through their regular shields to even stand a chance to getting to it. Most of the time, you couldn't, meaning they would often end up with the full 100 extra. To me at least, this change to putting it in front of their normal shields is designed to lessen that channeling sustained strength. Brig can only give a teammate a max of 100 armor overall anyway, but now you might be able to burn it that much more efficiently as it's channeling onto them, perhaps even stopping them from getting the bonus entirely, especially when you consider how much better certain types of damage are against it than they were before. The knock-on effects of this combined with D.Va's nerf might mean sustained comps in general are less ubiquitous. It's not the most significant change in isolation, but this is kind of a death by 1,000 cuts situation. Now, do I think this suddenly makes Brig terrible and Goats obsolete? No, there are more gaps than there were before in Goat's comp, but the comp's essential strengths remain the same. The amount of shielding, damage denial abilities, and speed brawling with Lucio is still formidable. Great Goat's teams won because their rotation of all this utility made it last forever, not because any one thing was totally broken. Sure, you could say that old Rally was totally OP, but Goat's was still being scrimmed very, very recently, and it's my guess that it will continue to be so. And there is a big difference between more gaps being present for damage and that damage actually finding purchase. For instance, a Brig repair pack on a Zen, if he's in a duel, is still going to be frustrating for his enemies no matter what order it goes in. It's still going to be as likely to save him as it ever was. I'm going to commit here and say we'll still see Goats run at the very top of matchmaking and in the pro scene where it's applicable. I could be wrong, but that's just my opinion. Now we can't talk about the PTR update without covering the new map, which is an Assault or 2CP variant set in Paris. I'll leave any opinions about how the map might actually play until we get good data from it going live, but suffice to say, I'm not the biggest fan of 2CP as it plays in matchmaking. It's great at the pro level, and I'd like to see this map in the Overwatch League at some point. Aside from that though, visually it is stunning, very effectively capturing the Parisian backstreet feel, while also making sure to capture famous landmarks everyone would immediately think of, the Eiffel Tower and the Seine River being the obvious highlight. Some of my favourite features are the Lunar Cabaret Club, which forms the attacker's first spawn, where we get to see that fantastic Omnic singer. I do love her hair, or shaped metal casing, whichever you prefer, and I love the restaurant outside. The sign means the two snails in English, by the way. Now, layout-wise, I cannot help but recognise some similarities with Hanamura, first point being directly ahead of spawn, and then the second being off to the right of the first, like a rough right angle shape. The Grand Palace that forms point 2 also has a boxy feel like Hanamura, except the high ground surrounding the point is less pronounced and evenly accessible to both teams. Like I said, I'm going to wait until we've actually played it a bit to cast judgment on this map, but there's loads of other cool details to Paris as well. The working piano in the building to the left of the first point, which then becomes one of the exit ways for the attacker's second spawn, is really cool. Reddit already has clips of people shooting out tunes on it. I expect that to become a meta community. First to play Moonlight Sonata wins. How does one play chords on it with only one weapon? There'll be whole teams trying to sync up and do that, I can see it now. Right in the middle of the map there's a police station and there's a nod to Junkrat and Roadhog, which is nice. Also the Omnics on the wanted posters look pretty hipster, which I found quite funny. But it's the pro-Omnic equality posters and propaganda that really attracted the eye. You can see similar posters on King's Row, which got me thinking, why are they there? We've never had a map released this early in a year before. Blizzard World went live in January, but it went to the PTR the previous November, and the same with Oasis the previous year. It's early for an archives map like Rialto was. That came to the PTR in April with the event, but something about the Omnic posters makes me wonder. Now this map is set in the daytime, but Paris is very famous for being beautiful at night. I can see them having a modded version of it for a lore event like Archives. There are as well two famous French characters in Overwatch lore, Widow and her husband Gerard, whom she murdered after being brainwashed by Talon. That's always struck me as quite a tragic story flashpoint, as when we last saw Gerard in the Reaper comic set just before the last Archives event, he was still alive and very active in the Overwatch organization. I could be well off here, and perhaps the posters are just posters, but I wouldn't be massively surprised if this year's Archives event was set in Paris. There's also not a lot of time for Blizzard to release another map before April, going on previous release estimates, so if it isn't set in Paris, then it would have to reuse a map or assets we've already seen for quite a while. That's not out of the question, I guess, but there's enough heat surrounding repeat events as it is. I highly doubt Blizzard would take the one event that's almost universally praised and reuse scenarios we've already experienced and call it new. This is something I really welcome your guys' feedback on. Is Paris more than just an assault map, or is Eddie getting carried away again, as is his wont? Next up, we'll cover some stats that Jayne released about how hero bans and protects worked in his Tournament of Future Champions. He tweeted out a few infographics from ELO Hell Esports that tracked how these test mechanics worked, and said, the most interesting thing about these stats is how the variety of banned heroes was much greater than the protected heroes. I can't help but wonder how that would have changed if there hadn't been any protects at all. Now aside from that observation, what I think is fascinating is the spread of the bans themselves. Part of the upsides of a hero ban / protect mechanic is that it comes with its own metagame. Say if you're playing a really strong GOATS team on a GOATS map, well, banning Brig or Lucio could really scupper their plans, meaning that they have to adapt in turn with their bans or protects. The end result is more comp variation, less direct mirror matches, and increased in-game tactical adjustments. That is essentially why I like the idea. It adds a layer of complexity and depth that isn't there when both teams can just pick whatever they want. As Jeff said in a recent interview, top-level players and teams optimize. If the best thing to run is the same for both teams, then we can get a stagnant scene full of ghost mirrors or dive dominance back in the day. What I find funny is that right at the top of the protect list, which is much smaller in variation as Jayne noted, are D.Va and Lucio, two heroes who you arguably can't play many comps without, despite your matchmaking experience to the contrary. Now I can totally understand why this whole topic of hero bans makes the average rank player nervous. Nobody wants their main to be taken off the table. But for organised play, I'm really struggling to see the downside. If nothing else, this is an interesting test that should be continued. Jeff Goodman has said that there aren't enough heroes for a pick ban to work, but when a meta gets stale for a long time, bans are kinda happening anyway because nobody can afford to get creative for the fear of getting stomped by whatever's the easiest and most efficient to run. Sure, heroes that don't get played aren't banned, but if we never see them anyway, does it really make a difference? Where, dear friends, has Doomfist gone? What ends up happening then is all the weight of balancing everything so it's all equally viable in its respective context falls on Blizzard's shoulders, and they really have a lot of my sympathy there, because I don't think it's actually perfectly possible. I think without ban and protect, there will always be something that rises to the top that has too much value for off-meta comps to effectively counter consistently. But you don't need to nerf a character like Doom to the point where he's useless if bans exist, or Brig, or Valk Mercy, or Tracer, or any of the other heroes that have been too too strong at any point in Overwatch's life. If everything is OP, then the ban protect meta just gets juicier, as it's not possible to take away all the good tools in one go. You have to pick your poison. Anyway, you guys know how we feel and why we find it interesting. I highly suggest you check out the data for yourself and watch some of the VODs and future games to see how it actually plays. Now, to finish off the video, I just want to draw a little bit of attention to Dafran's feature on the Atlanta Reign YouTube channel. Dafran's entrance into the Overwatch League is certainly a hot narrative for the start of Season 2 because, and this is addressed in the interview, many people are unsure whether he'll be able to stay away from the drama that has followed him in the past and be able to make the most of his talent. As he says, I think people do in general want to see him do well, partly because the redemption story is something we're all accustomed to and want to see fulfilled. I know some people absolutely don't want to see him succeed and don't support him being in the league because of his past, but personally, I'm a bit of a sucker for someone turning themselves around, and I do believe in second chances. What I did find funny though is when he described his gaming history as essentially trying to go pro in Counter-Strike, failing, and then coming to Overwatch because people were noobs. Now, the way he says it is so hilariously matter of fact, I can tell he just thinks that's true, and I'm sure in some ways it probably was. But things like that I think explain why the people that like Dafran do. He just speaks honestly from his point of view, irrespective if he's correct or if people could take it the wrong way. Let's just say this, press conferences are going to be entertaining whenever Atlanta play. And that's about it for today's video, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave us a rating. Also, please let us know what you thought about any of the stories featured in the comment section down below. If you never want to miss another video of ours again, please click the bell icon next to the subscribe button on our channel to join the notification squad. You'll be in great company. And finally, please follow the Your Overwatch Twitter so where you can find updates about new videos and other cool stuff. I've been Eddie the Chump, and until next time,